We start with this the factor price equalization theory. Go over quickly. Price of factors equalization, price of goods becomes equal. This is wrong. So I want to emphasize to you this direction. Do not say that equalization of the prices of factors makes equalization in prices of goods. No, the other way around. This is wrong. The link is the other way, which is price of goods become equals because of trade will lead to price of factors become equalized. This is wrong. This is correct. It is the price of goods that equalize becomes world price. Yes, becomes world price. It happens because of free trade. So that equalization lead to this one, factor price. So price of X over price of Y in country A equalize becomes price of X over price of Y, the ratio in country B, country C, country D, E, and the world. All the same. So, number 2, absolute term. This is in relative terms. Also in absolute terms. WA equals WB, wages in country B, wages equals wages in country C, equals wages in the world. And also interest rate in country A equals to interest rate in country B, in country C, and the world. This is, that comes later. This is in absolute term, in relative term. So we're done with that. This is relative term. WA, wages in country A, in relation to interest rate in country A, will equalize with wages, ratio of wages over interest rate in country B, ratio of wages to interest rate in country C, and the world. So that's why my story, my drama of Kodiang, you don't need to go to New York to work to get higher salary, because I've learned, the mother said, I've learned from Stopper Samuelson, and that's going to be next, or we discussed that already next. So let's go to our regular topic that we're gonna finish. We assume one of the factors is fixed or immobile, or in other way, the word here, specific factor. So that factor is specific to certain industry. Capital for producing aircraft, aeroplane, cannot be used for production of wheat or rice or mangoes or banana. No. For airplane, yes, that kind of capital is specific to airplane only. So when this is only in the short term, resources are factors. When we say resources, we mean factors are not mobile, we assume, in the short term. In the long term, it will be mobile, and we'll go back to the normal situation. The result is that resources specific to import competing industries will lose. On the other hand, resources specific to export-oriented industries will gain from free trade. We'll see this. So, assume K is specific, while L is mobile. I'm checking anyone trying to get in. No pending request. Sharing again because it lost. So I hope you can see this, the slide. Tell me that if you don't see the slide.
Yes, doctor.
Thank you. Thank you. Assume K specific while L is mobile that can move between X and Y. Suppose KS KS is capital specific for steel industry only. KS K capital KS K steel, and KC is capital specific to computer industry. On the other hand, L is mobile between two industries, can move from steel to computer and vice versa. Assume United States has comparative advantage in computers. So this given to us from our assumption. So we trade US exports computer. That's what we call export-oriented industry. And import skills. If steel is the import substituting or import competing industry. Here, go back. Import competing is steel. Export oriented industry is computer for the United States. So steel price declines. Why? Steel price declines. United States import steels, and steels is cheaper in the world through trade. Remember, world price, when trade is world price. So the world price is cheaper than the price of steel in the United States. The price of steel declines. As a result, demand for capital specific to steel declines. Let me go over again. Why the steel price declines? Because United States imports steels which is cheaper, can be bought cheaper through trade at the world price. So when the steel price declines, the demand for capital that is specific to steels declines. As a result, income for those who own the capital specific to steel, which is KS, declines. On the other hand, computer price increases because of trade. Before trade, computer prices was low in the United States. With trade, the world price is higher than the price of computer domestic price before trade. So computer price increase with international trade, with free trade. Increase in computer prices will lead to increase in demand for capital, KC, specific to computer. As a result, those who own the capital specific to computers, KC, who own the KC, their income will increase. So, income of factor specific to the export-oriented industry will increase. These people will gain from international trade. Who? The owner of capital specific to the computer industry in this case. But the owner of capital that is specific to the computer industry. Income of factor specific to the import computing industry will decrease. They will lose. If I'm owner of capital that is specific to the production of steel, I'll be sorry to myself, will not be happy. But on the other hand, my neighbor, he owns capital specific to the production of computer, he'll be very, very happy. Got it? So far, we have looked at incomes of specific factors K, S, and KC. What about incomes of the mobile factor? We have not looked at what happened to the income of the mobile factor. The owner of labor, who? Laborers themselves. Figure here explain what happens to income of the mobile factor, which is labor, when KS and KC are specific. So we're talking here, we're plotting total labor force. This labor force, not total. This is the amount of labor force. We have total of labor force 30 workers, and wages, vertical. We're gonna see the movement of labor into the computer industry. That's the logical thing to say, because United States specializes in computer. Yes. Assume here. Oh, this bullet 1, 2, 3. The third bullet. Assume the United States has comparative advantage in computers. So the US will increase production of computers. Who thought that? Hackshawley thought that. Before that, who thought that? Smith and Ricardo. So United States has comparative advantage in computers, will specialize in computers, and will export computers. And as a result, we're going to see movement also of labor to the computer industry, because the more computers produced, or for any product, the more you produce of that product, the more of both capital and labor will be needed. But depending on the capital intensity of the product. Okay, let's see now. We have a total labor force of 30 workers. Anything there? We start with, this is AD. We're gonna look at the intersection between demand for labor. This is in the steel. Demand for labor in the steel industry. And this is demand for labor in the computer industry. This is a starting point. 14 labor are used or working in the computer industry, and the rest is we have 30. So 16 in the steel industry to start with at this point A. 14 and 16. So that's the starting. Okay, we know United States has comparative advantage in computers. We're gonna see movement. More labor will be working in the computer industry. Why? United States will produce more computers. Listen carefully at this point. When more computers are produced, more of both factors will be needed. More of both factors will be needed. Not one, but both. However, it depends on the intensity of that product. If computer is capital intensive, but in this case, we assume capital, we already assume. Yeah, let me go the normal way. The normal condition, if computer is capital intensive, I said just now, both will be needed, K and L. Which one will be needed by more? Computer is capital. K will be needed by more. Okay. However, we assume here no movement of capital, because capital for computers are specific for computers. Capital for steel are specific for steel. This is our assumption. As a result, this is our model of specific factors when KS and KC are specific. Only labor are not specific. Labor is mobile, can move to computer industry, can move to steel industry. Now, bear in mind, this is specific factor, not the normal one, specific factor. So movement, more labor will be going into the computer industry. As a result, move to 18. This point B. So some students made a mistake. They put this way. No, this way is reducing for computers. This way to the right, from 14 to 18. Oh yeah. Yes, this point B. So this is a new shifting the demand for labor in the computer industry to the right because of specialization in computer industry, comparative advantage when there is a specific factor involved. One is capital, KS and KC. So wages, previously it was 15. Now wages is now up to 20 at point B. Increase in wages. So the trade effect on incomes of a mobile factor is ambiguous because that's part of the story. I have not yet go to point C. incomes of a mobile factor is ambiguous. We're not sure. It depends on, yes, it depends on the consumption pattern of the mobile factors. If L L will gain. If these laborers are crazy about using computers or buying computers, which is what US exports, whose price is increased, L will lose from international trade. I go back to the first bullet. If laborers in the United States are crazy to be buying steel, which United States imports, whose price has decreased because of international trade, because United States can buy cheaper from overseas, price decrease, L will gain from trade. But if they're crazy about using computers that United States produces and exports, whose price now has increased, the price increased, so L, laborers, will lose from trade. So conclusion, factor specific to the exporting industry, which is computer, will gain. Factor specific to the import computing industry, which is steel, will lose. The mobile factor, on the other hand, L, will gain or lose. It is ambiguous. We're not sure. It's not that we're not sure. We cannot say right away. That depends on the consumption pattern of laborers of L. Gain if consume import computing products. Lose if consume export products, which are more expensive now because of trade. That's what United States wants. More expensive because United States exports computers. However, in the long run, we assume no specific factors. So we go back to the normal situation of Heckscher-Ohle theorem and Stoffel-Samuelson theorem. Income of the factor abundant in the country, which is used intensively in the product of that country specializes and exports based on comparative advantage, derived from factor endowment. Very, very specific. A lot of meat here. Derived from factor endowment means, as taught by Heckscher-Ohle, will increase, will gain. And not only that, with magnification effect, factor prices increase more than the product prices. Oh, 3.3 there. We need to say that it'll go back to point to the normal situation. Okay, so we'll go back to this 14 and 16. So in the long run, does trade make the poor even poorer? Why blame on trade? Before leaving the factor endowment theory, consider this question. Are Americans' incomes being pulled down by workers in Mexico or China because of trade? Is trade harming unskilled workers? Economists agree some combination of trade, technology, education, immigration, union weakness has held down wages for unskilled American workers, but blaming to trade is tough. It's not fair, partly because income inequality is so pervasive. So pervasive that it's there and it's not easy to change. Pervasive and widespread. Figure 3.3, wage gap to skilled workers and unskilled workers. This is wage gap, skilled to unskilled workers. We're going to see wage ratio and labor ratio. This is wage ratio and labor ratio. This is to the right, more labor. Going up here, higher wage ratio. So what is the wage ratio? Wage of skilled workers divided by the wages of unskilled workers. Labor ratio, quantity of skilled workers available divided by the quantity of unskilled workers. So labor ratio, skill, more skill to the right, and wages of skilled higher relative to wages of unskilled as you go up. Impacts by each. International trade and technological change increase demand for skilled workers, which is the shift from DO to D1. Assuming constant supply curve, which is SO, the equilibrium wage ratio rises to 2.5, thus widening the gap and inequality. So we assume constant supply curve SO. Yeah. SO. Which is intersection here. To start with SO and DO. Wage ratio at 2, labor ratio at 2 and wage ratio at 2. International trade and tech change will shift this to the right. So, okay. Immigration of unskilled workers results in increase or decrease in supply of skilled workers. So the question is here, what happened to the, let's go back, trade and immigration. So figure 3.3, we're discussing a wage gap of skilled workers versus unskilled workers caused by some combination of trade, technology, and education, and also immigration, and the strength or weakness of the workers' union in the country. Income inequality is pervasive. Wages of skilled workers relative to those of unskilled workers, and the outcome of the interaction between supply and demand in the labor market. So better read this thing. So that was international trade and tech change, immigration. So all this explained here by increasing the demand for skilled relative to unskilled workers, expanding trade or technological change will result in greater inequality, not improve, will result in greater inequality of wages between the skilled and unskilled worker. So shifting to the right, more inequality of wages, higher inequality. Previously it was here. Okay. Also, immigration of unskilled workers intensifies wage inequality by decreasing the supply of skilled workers relative to unskilled workers. Will increase wage inequality because there's going to be a decrease in the supply of skilled workers because immigration of unskilled workers. However, expanding opportunities for college education results in an increase in the supply of skilled relative to unskilled workers, thus reducing wage inequality. In the figure, the wage ratio equals wage of skilled workers to wage of unskilled workers. The labor ratio equals the quantity of skilled workers as ratio to the quantity of skilled workers. So the three things here that we discussed is here. The combination of this. So which one that we want to focus on? With international trade, there's going to be widening of wage gap because international trade will shift the demand for skilled workers from DO to DY. Demand for skilled workers. This is more skilled. This is because of international trade movement to the right. Shift the demand curve to the right. Immigration, on the other hand, results in decrease in the supply of skilled workers. Relative to the unskilled workers. Because immigration, those are coming are unskilled workers. So there's going to be decrease in the supply of skilled workers in relation, in relation to the unskilled workers. So the shift of SO to S2, assuming that the demand curve is constant at DO. So the equilibrium wage ratio rises. So widening wage gap. SO to S2, assuming this is not changing. DO. Just now, it changed to the right because of international trade and technological change. Now finish the story. Second case, which is immigration of unskilled workers. The impact of immigration of unskilled workers, it is here. Reduction in the ratio of the skilled to the unskilled. The shift in the supply of labor of the skilled shift from S0 to S2. The relative of skilled to unskilled. So shift to the left. XO to S2 here. Oh. With D is fixed and constant here, not changing. So as a result, shift from here, this point, which is 2.0 and 2.0 here, to this point. From this point here, in this intersection, to this intersection. S2 and DO, which is 2.5. So resulting in the higher inequality of wages from 2.0 to 2.5. Higher inequality. So both cases we've seen. First case, trade and tech change. The result is widening of wage gap. Immigration of unskilled also, the same result. Widening of wage gap, which is inequality. This is the first one because of trade. We start here, we end up here. This is SO. First case, trade and tech change. Starting here, intersection here, at SO, no change, SO, constant there. And the shift in the demand of skills as a result. Widening of wage ratio between skilled and unskilled from 2.0 now 2.5 here. Okay, make sure you understand this. The first case, SO doesn't shift, maintain at SO, no change. Only the demand changes to the right. So from this intersection 2.0 to 2.5. The result is widening of the wage ratio because of international trade and technological change. Okay. Second case is here. D not changing, but the shift in the supply of labor, the shift in the ratio of the supply of skilled to unskilled labor shift to the left from SO to S2. So we began here. Yeah, we began here 2.0. Now our intersection, new intersection is here. DO and S2. DO with S2. So 2.5. So again, same result. widening of wage ratio between skilled and unskilled, uneven. The third is education and training. What happened? This will shift the SO to the right to S1, increase in the ratio of the skill, because with education and training, people get more skilled. People are becoming more skilled through education and training. So more skilled, the shift SO to S1, SO to S1 to the right. Assume constant demand curve DO. We assume the same. Ceteris paribus. Constant. So we begin here, this point, 2.0, intersection of DO and SO. Now with education and training, as the supply, the relative supply of skilled to unskilled, shift to the right from SO to S1. So with a new intersection here, which is 1.5 and 2.5. So 1.5, as a result, education helps closing the gap, reducing the gap. Incomes become, there's more income equality or less inequality because of education. So narrowing the wage gap. Does trade make the poor even poorer? So just now we just understood the different impacts. Trade will lead to higher income inequality between the skilled versus the unskilled. Yes. Immigration also will lead to higher inequality of income between the skilled and unskilled. However, education will close or narrow the gap of income between the skilled and unskilled. Now, empirical evidence. Klein in 1997, during 1973, technological change was about 4 times more powerful in widening wage inequality in the US than did trade, which accounted for only 7 percentage points. So why blame on trade? So this is again, we study international trade. Free trade is good. You should not blame on trade. There are other things, because the empirical evidence here it is because of other things, not because of trade. Other things, mostly the main as found here, technological change has made the gap widening between the skilled and unskilled. Of course, when there is tech change, more technology, those who are left behind are those who are not willing to study, not willing to be trained. not willing to further education, to get training, to upgrade their skill, they will be left behind with technological change. You must, recharge your skill. What I call recharge. You must upgrade your skills. So Klein found that the income inequality in the United States was because of tech change, not so much because of trade. Tech change was about 4 times more powerful in explaining the widening gap, whereas trade only 7 percentage points as an explanation for that wage widening, the gap. So why blame on trade? Lawrence, 2008, rising wage inequality during first decade of 2000s, and it's now my own note. Record the subprime crisis of 2005 and 2006, United States. Subprime crisis. Housing, from housing to banking, housing, the bubble burst. Housing was high, and drop, bubble burst, and banks losing, and already these mortgages has been packaged as mortgage-backed securities and traded on the Wall Street, and that mortgage-backed securities has became valueless, no more value because of housing prices dropped, the collapse of bubbles. So those who got the loan, even though they were not qualified to get a loan, these are the subprime people. Those are the first who cannot pay back the loans, and that's a crisis from housing spread to banking, spread to Wall Street, and spread to world economy. That was the subprime crisis 2005-2006 that led after that to global recession in 2008 and 2009. Lawrence in 2008 found this rising wage inequality during the first decade of 2000s more closely corresponds to asset market performance and technological and institutional innovation rather than international trade, not because of international trade, because of assets. And I give my own note over there, the subprime crisis. So why blame on trade? Free trade is good. Is international trade responsible for the loss of American manufacturing jobs? How about robots instead? Machines do much of the work that humans used to do. Automation of American factories is more important factor than international trade in the loss of American factory jobs. It is automation, not trade. So why blaming on trade? It is tech change. Is it the presence or impacts of robots will grow over time? Conclusion: apportioning the blame of job losses on international trade is misleading and problematic, as there are a combination of factors involved in the labor market as well as factors outside of the labor market, such as assets prices, as well as technological change and innovation. Is the factor endowment theory a good predictor of trade patterns? So now, Leontief wanted to test the validity of factor endowment theory as presented by Shaolin. He tested it using US data. Is it factor endowment theory a good predictor of what a country should be specialized in? So, Wassily Leontief, the first attempt to test factor endowment theory empirically, was the first to attempt to test factor endowment theory empirically. Given United States has more capital compared to labor, so K over L is high in United States. According to factor endowment theory, United States will export capital intensive goods, will import competing goods, will import labor intensive goods, or the import competing goods will be labor intensive. So export goods is capital intensive, import competing goods is